Hello and welcome to Cosmic Tickle. This is the show for all the creative, sensitive, visionary, and intuitive women who, like myself, want to create life on our terms, which means living in a flow, living and working on purpose, taking care of our well being, living according to our values, our high standards, and living our truth. Today, I have a special treat for you. I'm inviting the first guest onto my show. Her name is Sara Francis. Sara will tell us how to work in a flow, how to be more efficient in using our energy, and how to use our intentions to create success in our work. So I'm so excited for this conversation. Let's get started. So, hello, Sara.
Hello, my friend.
This is Sara Francis for all my listeners. She is creative mentor and she mentors creative entrepreneurs and amazing intuitive people like ourselves. So I'm so happy that you're here with me. And personally, I know Sara, I don't know for how long, was it like 3, 4 years, maybe?
Oh man, I think we met in like 2020, so it's been at least 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, okay. It's been a while, time has passed. And as we just chatted before hitting records, everything changed since we changed. So we're here because Sara just celebrated 4 years of her business anniversary, which triggered my interest in sharing her story as the first guest on my podcast. And it's going to be super exciting to celebrate with Sara 4 year mark, which is big for every business, like every year, I guess.
Mm.
But I want to start by asking you some questions. And first, that I wanted to ask you, which was intriguing, something you touched on in your post celebrating your anniversary, was how you started. What made you get into the field of
Mm.
mentoring uh, intuitive, creative entrepreneurs? So, if you can share some of that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely fell into it by accident. It was not in the plan. It was not something I even knew existed um, when I was getting started, which is kind of hilarious because it just was born out of me finishing school and knowing that I just had so much that was going against applying to a regular person job and deciding to get a salary and have a boss and all of these things. It was shocking actually how the very human part of me that felt like I needed to do that to survive on my own and be able to be a responsible, newly minted adult human collided with the part of me that from the very beginning didn't even need to go into that atmosphere before knowing that that was not my path
Yeah,
and was not the place for me to go. And so it was very interesting to
I know.
graduate and then feel like my internal landscape was these different layers that were a bit at war of the fear of, oh my God, this is the most irresponsible thing you've ever done. How could you not apply to any jobs? And then another deeper layer of myself that says, this is the most responsible thing I could be doing.
I
Like,
know.
I'm so happy I'm doing this. This is like the most sustainable way I could possibly succeed is by going into this complete unknown in this
Mhm.
self created pressure cooker of I have to figure out what my path is because I'm not giving myself any other option.
Yeah,
And
I love
so
this so much. I
so
totally
from there,
agree. Yeah.
I know. It's so real. Anyone who's been there knows that feeling and
Yeah.
knows the layers that are at work that
Yeah.
can be so completely like opposite. And yet there's this coherence, this inner coherence of like, all right, the fear can hang out, the stress can hang out, but it's not in the driver's seat. We're going anyway, come with. And
Yeah.
so this sense of, okay, we're going to figure out then, if you go your own way, what does that look like? So I began by doing done for you social media services, mostly for intuitive women who were starting their own businesses, because that's where I gravitated to. And also that's where I had some training, formal education in, was in marketing, communications, writing. I had bounced back and forth a lot in my schooling. And so I went between marketing, as well as ended up with a degree in health psychology, mental health, that area, and behavior change. And so I had an interesting mix by the time I graduated between marketing and health psychology, behavior change, mental health work. So starting out, done for you social media services because I could do it and people were paying for it back in 2019. I mean, they're still paying for it, I'm sure. But back in the day, that was a very easy entry point for me. And then graduated myself within a few months to marketing consultation work because I was too booked out with done for you social media service and I didn't have any hours left. And so I started doing consulting so that I would get on with these intuitive women who were in like the health and wellness space, or breathwork facilitators, or yoga instructors, or like so many varieties of intuitive disciplines. And I would give them just consultation on how they can grow their brand, do their marketing, all of that. Except on those phone calls, we didn't talk about marketing, barely ever, because we would get on the phone and they would say, I can't do my marketing because I'm procrastinating. I can't do my marketing because I'm afraid to start and I'm like in this perfectionism kind of loop. I can't do marketing because I don't trust myself. I don't have time because I have all this other work and this other job I need to attend to. I don't have the energy, and like all of these things were coming out that they couldn't get to the marketing if they didn't address all of these pieces. And so my mental health, behavior change, like health psychology background was like, and my personal study in spirituality, in my particular interest of flow state cultivation, in the creative process, swooped in and was so excited to talk about they were like, I'm blocked. And I was like, amazing, like so excited because I knew that going into those pieces was going to be so much more impactful and also help them so much more in their businesses than just talking about the marketing.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, all of our marketing consultation calls were taken up by these very practical strategies that I ended up sharing with them of how they can help their focus, their energy, their confidence, their self-doubt, like all of these things. And realizing like, oh my God, I love doing this so much more than simply talking about the marketing. And I found this sweet spot there where I don't just meditate with them and help them with the internal work and then leave it. And I also don't just talk about the marketing. I love operating in that intersection where your inner landscape informs your action and where your creative process gets to actually assist the evolution and the bringing out of those challenges so that you can meet them and so that you can learn more about yourself. And you can use business or your creative process as a way of making your inner growth and your inner evolution real and tangible. As a reflection of it in the human layer of what you make and what you put out and what you create, because it is very clear, like showing you what's going on in your inner world. And it can be used as a reflection of each other. And so I love that intersection where, yes, we're grounded in the tangibles of not just like, how do you feel? It's also like, what are you making? And how is that creation informing your inner landscape and your inner landscape informing the creation? So then that's where we met.
This is so cool. And I love, because I think that would resonate with pretty much every single woman like that. Because and it is also helpful that they were able to say that, because I think there are so many people that are maybe less intuitive, less sensitive, that would push for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't work. This doesn't work,
Yeah.
and they would just like a donkey push against that wall and try to make it work without having that
Yeah.
reflection, right? That is so important. And actually admitting that, well, I'm in this place that feels like exactly what you said, like this inner battle where like some forces collide and there's just like, okay, there is no moving forward. I can learn all I want about marketing. I can do all about content and all these kind of actions,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something in me that just keeps me stuck, or just kind of resists that motion forward, right? And this is so cool that you just grab the occasion, grab the opportunity, and just like, yay, my the spiritual, the inner child, whatever we want to call it, just wants to play with this. And you just took
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity and used all that you learned before to just create something on the spot to help these
Yeah.
women, because it sounds like it was super intuitive for you as well, because
It
it's
was.
something amazing that we have the part of us that has this overthinking nature, is it just wants to prepare for everything, but there is so much more wisdom inside of us that you just described from the perspective of lived experience, lived lessons, everything that we
Mm-hmm.
learned, everything that we saw and tried, that when we allow things just come and help us, but not unless we allow them to join into play, join the party, so to speak, right?
Oh, yeah. Especially because a lot of that process of bringing those disciplines together and letting my lived experience create something was suspending disbelief and allowing my mind to not be the um, center of wisdom for that process, which in our cultures, most of us are really used to the mind being the dominant, if not the only source of intelligence that we use.
Yeah.
And when we're put in these scenarios, or we put ourselves in these scenarios where we're creating something completely different than our lived experience so far,
Yeah.
can tell us, here's how it's going to work, here's how you'll start your own business, or here's how you will find your path, because you're going outside of maybe what is expected as like the successful
Yeah.
linear route, then you're put into new territory where your mind isn't the highest source of intelligence
Mm.
or the best tool that you can use anymore, which
Mm.
is where
Absolutely.
what you said comes in, of intuition becomes, and body wisdom and lived experience becomes a much richer source of intelligence to
Yeah.
draw from in that process. And the mind starts to have to learn how to step back and let go, and all the things it doesn't really like doing at
Yeah.
first, and how wisdom from your intuition can inform your mind as a tool to still get things accomplished and put things out into the physical. And it becomes more of a reflective tool of your mind understands afterwards what your body experience is leading with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love conversations with Sarah, because you like talking with you is, is like going into all those philosophical deep subjects that get to be abstract and so yummy in the ways we can really analyze how these things go, because there is so many aspects to ourselves that
Mm,
they are in conflict, right?
yeah.
Not all of them agree. Actually, few of them agree unless we have done the inner work that allows us to get into that flow that you're teaching, right? So you are basically, I want to say that you used flow before you even kind of developed the idea of how you were teaching flow by just embodying it right on the spot, talking to people. But for this reason, what in my experience is super important is self-trust, because the mind is the tool that we use and overuse, I want to say, all the time to overcompensate for the lack of trust we have for ourselves, right? And we have lost, and we have been invalidated, and we invalidated our instincts that are so natural, that just live somewhere between the mind and body, that just live somewhere where this all collides. But unless we say, this is how it goes, I'm going to trust what I utter from my mind, and even if I make a fool out of myself, let's see how that goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is really an overcompensation feeling if we're negating the instincts and the wisdom that keeps wanting to pop up, because it never stops talking to you. It can get really buried and very numbed out, and very quiet compared to the loudness of the mind, right? And the distracting like urgency of the mind. It has a lot of tools at its disposal to make you feel like it's the most important wisdom center in your body. But absolutely, like even that conflict, the inner conflict between mind and intuition or things like that, at some point created that narrative I saw floating around for a while of like fighting your mind, or like thinking your mind is, the enemy, when in reality that conflict is a source of communication, where all the aspects of your body and your mind are trying to speak to each other and develop that coherence. And that's where flow state really comes from, is not by resisting and feeling like, oh, like my mind and the fear is the enemy and I need to beat it, or the self-doubt, I need to beat it. Like the self-trust comes from having that coherence and that communication between centers, but also honoring what each role is. So like you said, it doesn't overcompensate. So that's spot on.
So if you were to boil down, of course, everyone is different, honoring that everyone is different, but, having seen a number of clients working with different people already, especially women, right? And I wanted to ask you, when you boil down, what would be the root cause of these problems that they have with, on top of what we just said, if you were like zero in on something, what would be your first instincts to say?
At the core of it is, from what I've seen, a sense of often clinging and like grasping and seeking control, rather than relaxing your experience and being able to know how to go into the part of yourself that is able to even do that. So, because like we've kind of already circled around in this call, there's this sense that all of our lived experience is benefiting us and is teaching us something that is going to inform our path and make it and strengthen our intuition's capabilities of taking us into these territories that we don't even need the mind to be the domineering force to go into this new, like starting a business, I had no idea how to do it. Teaching flow state, had no idea how to do it. Like all of these pieces that my mind had no evidence that it was possible or how to do it properly. But my creative channel, my intuition, had the lived experience already encoded to be able to lead from that place if it was allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yet, if I hadn't been able to yield to that wisdom center, then I would have gotten stuck in believing that when I graduated and my mind said, you have to apply to jobs, this is the most irresponsible thing you could possibly do. How are you not doing this? And if I was clinging and grasping to that, I would have been like, okay, let's go, let's apply to jobs, creating this dissonance in myself where some part of me would know,
Yeah.
like that doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
But with the clinging and the controlling, something that doesn't feel quite right can still weirdly feel right because it feels comfortable, because it feels safer. And so if we boil it all down, similar to your words that you used of like self-trust, at the end of it all is often a clinging to the part of us that wants to control and all of the devices that it uses to control.
Yeah. Kind of to feel safe, right?
On the other side, oh yeah, safety. I mean, if we want to boil it down to one word, I would say safety.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because like the desire to control comes from the desire to feel safe.
Yeah.
And so letting go of that clinging and being able to find safety in a more robust place.
Yeah.
And that's what it keeps circling back to over and over again, right? Is like seeking safety in the mind, seeking safety in the external, seeking safety in a job, seeking safety in all of these ways. And then even when you get that, feeling like it's not enough, that you aren't safe yet.
Yeah.
And so that's redirecting us over and over again to a more robust, deeper place to source our safety from, which is something that the entrepreneurial path or the creative path accelerates that process a lot.
Yes.
Because it shows you all the places that you don't feel safe.
I know.
And it also shows you the illusion of safety when you do succeed.
I know.
Right? It shows
it's
you
perfect.
like what places you thought you would feel safe in and then didn't. And then it redirects you over and over again. But when you're a creative or an entrepreneurial person, that you're choosing that as an active process. Like you're actively choosing, show me the places I don't feel safe. Show me the places I'm still seeking control and clinging and not trusting.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of you creating and like choosing this path. So that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I love your answer to this, and I feel completely the same. It all comes down to safety and seeking control to find safety. So that's part of us that is hungry for recognition, belonging, feeling secure, all these kind of things. Yeah, they all boil down to just, yeah, I want to be taken care of in the best way there is.
Yeah.
And I just love it because it really kind of reveals our vulnerability when we look at it in this way and, you know, allow ourselves to see it, which is not the most convenient thing when you're rushing and doing the tasks and, you know, checking off to-do lists and having to, you know, make money and do all kinds of things that we're supposed to do as adults, right? And I love how you say that there was an inner knowing that it feels safer to do something that is completely irrational in our culture, in our society, as being is contrary to what everyone says, and what survival instincts tell you to do, right? But there was a deeper sense of like, this feels like the safest thing to do. And I so relate to this because myself, I've been taking so many uncompromising choices that would go completely against the grain. But it felt like for most people, getting a job or applying for some, you know, practical position or doing some practical thing would be the instinct to follow. For me, it's like I cannot not do what I feel like I want to do. I just it's like there is this truth that guides us, that you and I have in common, that it feels like I cannot lie. I cannot live in authentic choice. It's just like soul crushing, which almost feels like a worse thing than, you know, the financial disaster or something like that. And, you know, I also have had experience, and it seems like you attract similar people to me, which are like more sensitive, intuitive women and all that. And in my perspective, well, I dare to say that there is, we are at the stages that we have these fears and anxieties and all that stuff that are there for a reason, and they just display to us that we have to upgrade our beliefs about what is the right thing to do, because we kind of live on a, if we don't, we live on a threshold of like being in those survival instincts, like I have to do this, and all the impositions of the mind. But something pulls us up, you know, to have that inner trust, to follow on our inner knowing, to follow that intuition. And to folks like probably like your clients, I can see that this is what's happening. And there is like this stretch that that is just like you cannot be in two realms at the same time. You cannot use survival tactics to thrive, right? You can't do both. And this is what causes that inner tension. And I love how you express that in talking about the grasping and that seeking control, because it's exactly like this dissonance that is happening, where we don't apply our potential to where the opportunity lies, to the stage that we're in. I love this conversation, and I just wanted to ask you, like, following up on this, what would you say then would be the best shift these people, these clients could have to, you know, achieve whatever, you know, that would be beneficial to them? What would be the goal, and what would be the shift? Because I'm sure, you know, seeing that discrepancy, we want to know how to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing that's really helpful is allowing yourself to play in the realm of the physical, because that's why I love working with entrepreneurs and creatives so much, is because we can talk about these kind of concepts like overcoming fear and being able to have your mind and your intuition talk to each other and learn how to help and support each other, rather than seeing your mind as the enemy or seeing intuition as untrustworthy. Like, those are all really helpful, and all life experience, regardless of if you ever start a business or ever engage with your creativity, like in any real devoted way, will give you opportunities to confront that. However, in the creative path and the entrepreneurial path, you're engaged with it, like we said, on a more active level, where it's about when you sit down to a desk or when you look at a piece of paper and are like, okay, what is my next move? What is my focus that I'm choosing? Because I am responsible. No one's telling me what to do. I'm responsible for discerning in my own system where this is leading me and what I crave to focus on, and what's even a relief to pour my energy into, because like you said, you can't not do it. And then in that space, once you know what that is, because you have that like inner knowing emerging, there's still the courage and the practice of being able to follow through to its completion, like to a creative cycle's completion, to have more of the lived experience of, okay, I'm going to publish that. I'm going to physically sit down and make that. I'm going to put that out for other people to see and complete that creative cycle, so that I can gain more lived experience so that my intuition has more to talk to my mind about. Mm-hmm. And so there's this layered experience where when you are engaged with that creative path, your mind is catching up to your intuition and being informed by your intuition, the more that you have physical evidence of here's what it felt like to create this. Mm-hmm. Here's what it felt like to publish this, or to show my face on social media, or to walk into a room in a local like women's circle and offer my services, or whatever it might be. And so the biggest shift that I've found is kind of the central pillar, at least in my work, is the act of like being able to engage with that intuitive aspect and be led by that throughout the entire creative process. So it's not just in the ideation, like dreaming, envisioning aspect, that you're in that sense of openness and intuitive power and like clarity, but all the way through the creative cycle, even when you're like using software, even when you are online on social media using Instagram or like YouTube or whatever, all the way through to when you receive feedback, or maybe don't receive any feedback at all. And that is this completion of the creative cycle that is then informing more of your intuition working with the tangible world. And so for me, that is what I'm always working with ultimately with my clients, is finding their way that their intuition interfaces with the physical world and how they can lead with that. And anything that they encounter on the way that feels like it creates any stuckness, we meet that. Knowing that we're also engaging then with talking to all the different wisdom centers of the body all the time, so that they can be in that coherence. Like every time we sit down to a session, or every day of their work, they're engaging with, okay, what is my mind telling me right now? Okay, what is my voice or my seat of expression asking from me right now? What is my heart asking right now? What is my gut instinct asking? What is my root, my like primal safety seat asking? And then bringing that into coherence of like, okay, how can you all help each other in the creative process? And then how can we on a practical level complete these creative cycles so that you can have this evolution on a tangible level of you take clients, or you give your offerings, or you get compensated for those offerings. Like all of these are physical, tangible reflections of that internal coherence that you're developing. So that would be the most important shift, is ultimately the being able to complete and follow through the whole creative cycle, and what it takes to do that while being led by your intuition rather than by force, or only exclusively by like getting it done, overworking, strategizing, controlling.
I love this explanation. And I have been in your program, and I have been in sync with your offerings.
Yes, you have.
Sometimes more often even telepathically. We were communicating a lot. And it's a funny thing when we get in touch with, it's almost like this point of surrender that we don't want to allow ourselves. When we start listening to those centers and we allow ourselves to listen to that intuition, that some things actually emerge. And sometimes these things can surprise us. And again,
often that's a good sign.
And again, we probably have to talk ourselves through, again, talk our minds through, like, okay, you had this plan, you had this outcome in mind, right? and now these things are unfolding. So what we're gonna do about this? There has to be some sort of resolution. And I love that you say, well, yeah, we have to embody this experience. We have to create a physical experience of this, because I think there is so much out there when we go into the realm of like spiritual business kind of mentors or coaches, when they're like overtly spiritual. And I would say that's a lot for the entire spiritual industry, where there is too much about, like, it's really bypassing the physical experience that we're here to have, and we have to learn from our day-to-day interactions with people and with ourselves to kind of move ourselves forward, right? And
yeah,
when we stay in our heads, that's, we spiral into all kinds of weird stories that are unhelpful. And so I love that you brought this as the most important paradigm shift, because yeah, it's like working with beliefs. People can spend hours and hours, saying affirmations, but unless you embody a belief, like, prove yourself wrong, give yourself an evidence of what you're
yeah.
working with, right?
Oof.
Yeah,
That'll show so much more to your mind and create so much more coherence when you create that felt evidence.
yeah.
And yeah, like, and that's the most spiritual thing you can possibly do, is let your spiritual life and your inner landscape inform and like saturate your physical world, right? And
Yeah.
so it's comfortable to stay up in the conceptual, and that's definitely what I see a lot of challenges, and people are getting discerning about that, right? Like so many old style coaching spaces where just you sit down and you talk about it and you get inspired and then you leave and you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Versus the sense of, let's get our hands on exactly what you are working with in your
Mm.
creative process. Let's see what you want to make. Let's see what's getting in your way. And let's walk the path together in your physical life.
Absolutely.
And let that inform what the inner landscape is asking for and what spiritual concepts are landing. And that's the most spiritual thing we can do, because then there's no distance or separation between, there's my spiritual self and then there's the version of me walking around, going, running errands, going to my job, and like sitting down at night wanting to create something but being too tired and going to bed. Right? Like, or
Yeah.
being comfortable like out in nature, like having all these ideas and feeling so in flow, and then not actually bringing any of them to fruition. And
Yeah.
so like that integration where you're working with the physical level, but you're bringing the sacredness all the way through the into the physical and into the strategic, creates again that sense of coherence that resolves so much of that tension, and as a result frees up so much energy
I'm all
that
about
you'll be
that.
shocked by how much you can create and how
Yeah.
fast you can learn, and how like rapidly your body and your intuition and your mind even acclimates to new ways of creating or new ways of belief when you're working with the physical, because of that felt evidence that you're creating. And yet when you're rooted in the intuitive aspect, you can experience even that kind of rapid transformation slowly, because you experience fast growth from stabilization, which is where that like robust sense of safety, the deeper sense of safety that's beyond circumstance, is at play.
Yeah, love that. So juicy.
Yeah.
And I want to ask something, that if someone didn't work with you or didn't work with me and my perspectives, they would be like, yeah, okay, but let's get to the practical. Does it allow me to achieve results? Does it allow me to, I don't know, secure clients, or, achieve the things that they've come here to achieve? So what would you say to these folks that,
Yeah, I would say that it is the most sustainable way, and also the most like energy efficient way, that you can create clients, create wealth, and create on top of wealth, which to me is like safety, self-trust. Money is part of wealth, but is like one of the surface layers of that. But absolutely, it also creates, like, it's what has allowed me to go full time in my business. I would not be running my business full time and generating enough income to support myself and my lifestyle if I wasn't using these like internal coherence and flow state practices that let it be something that I'm sustainably growing with. I've tried the other ways of like finding safety. And again, the money question, like, will this give me, revenue? Will this create clients? Can be another question of like, am I safe to trust that if I use these internal practices as my compass rather than the external focus of what are the strategies, what are all the marketing things, and absorb as much of that as I can, then that's what will make safety for me, versus the sense of, can I let my inner landscape and my intuition inform the strategies and create the strategies? Am I safe to do that? Will that generate income? Will that generate clients? And the answer is yes. However, it does require a holistic sense of being on board for that process. Like, we can spend a lot of time just in the marketing world, just in the like practical business world, and still get shit done, still like create money, still create clients. But what I've found at this 4-year mark of my business is that has an expiration date where it does stop working, because either it stops working in the external level of you're doing all the right things in terms of making all the posts and doing all the right sales stuff and everything, and yet nothing's working. Like, you're still not making sales, you're still not getting people to sign up with you, and it's like, what? Like, I'm doing all the right things. Or you stop working in it, so maybe your business or your clients and things are still running, but you start to feel kind of empty, or you start to feel burnt out, or you start to feel like just less enthusiastic about the things that you used to be so passionate about. And so it's another case of, and that's kind of my ultimate answer, is give it a try.
I know.
If you want to, give it a try with not using like the internal landscape aspects at all. Try just doing the marketing and just doing everything physical right. See how that goes. I did it. I tried. And ultimately, like, it will show you and it will redirect you into the importance of your inner landscape for that process. And so you don't even need to take our word for it. And I'm sure some people listening to this already have found that evidence through trying to do everything right and still finding that something was missing.
Yeah, and there is a fear of trying because of all the things we talked about, like the imperative of the mind, how it tells us how we should be. There are all the strategies and all the marketing advice out there that it's almost like there is safety in numbers, because so many people talk about this. We think that if only we follow these paths, then we will tag along with all these people and have all the success that they're talking about. And yet, on one hand, this is completely untrue, because if everyone was getting the same result from doing the same action, then everyone would be doing the same action. There would be no point of trying so many different things, because it would be like one thing that works. On the other hand, as intuitive, sensitive people like us, or creatives, it's like there is another aspect of that soul calling, that different kind of hunger, that no matter how much we fill our bellies, we will still be hungry, right?
Yeah.
And no matter how money you make, you will still be feeling kind of, something is itching you and you just want to go into something else. And that almost causes that greater pain. And I know, because when I met you, I had a different business. My first coaching business was for, healing mind, body. And it was extremely satisfying. And like the results were amazing. People were healing. I was making money. And, I could have been doing this over and over, and I'm sure it would have, been so successful. There is so much demand for it. And I've grown so much doing this. But soon enough, I was like, I can't do it. There is a part of me that is not having joy. And people would be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
All that everyone wants, and I'm like, I can sense there is more joy in doing something else. I don't know yet what it is, and again, that goes back to your initial point where you were like, I have to try this. I know I might fail. I know it's the most ridiculous thing that everyone is like against doing, but for us it's, I cannot not do it. I have to try, and it almost becomes not even trying. It's just there is this plan A and there is plan A only. There is no plan B or C or D.
Yeah.
We just have to
it's just the way.
It's just the way. And I wanted to say it's such a perfect explanation of the flow, because it's following your guidance. Is just you have to kind of flow around the obstacles that will be on your way. And there is, if you want to do something, you just follow that path, right? And see what happens. Which might take us eventually to changing the path, but it's still our path. This is the most paradoxical thing in this, that when you follow that inner truth, you're always on the right track.
Yeah,
right?
You can't mess it up.
You
can't be off track.
Oh yeah, you said actually something like that in your post, right? I feel so the same. Yeah, you can't be off track. I just want to kind of let that sink, because you can't be off track when you follow your inner knowing and follow your inner guidance, right? Which is the
you're not seeking anything outside of yourself at all. It's like completely intrinsic motivation, and it's birthing like the path physically, tangibly, each moment that you're using it, right? And each moment that you're like oriented to that as what guides you and what is the kind of beacon. And so it's the distinction between like your physical path, but your mind can start to be like, okay, I get it now. We run a business, we help people like this. And like for you, it was like, okay, we help people with mind body healing. Okay, I'm getting it now. And it can confuse that with your inner fire, which might change its outlet, right? It might start to redirect itself and say, okay, we needed that to learn from. We needed that external pathway, as like at one point that was the most potent expression of your inner truth in that moment, because you needed that to gain more lived experience, to refine it. And yet when we start to feel like disconnected from that, of like, oh, this isn't the most alive thing for me to be doing anymore, that's where the mind comes in. It's like, wait, what? This is the path. This is your gifts. When in reality, the physical thing, whatever you're doing, whatever words you're saying, whatever you're helping people with, isn't the gift, and it isn't the path. It's like the external reflection of it. And sometimes that, and often, and hopefully, that inner fire will shift its focus, and that inner current will shift its focus to, actually, this is an even better outlet. Now that you've gained the live experience from that, this is the most potent outlet. You could pour that consciousness into the world.
Yeah.
And it will call to you and say, this isn't working for you anymore. We're evolving. We're going in this direction now. And you can choose whether or not to yield to that. But it'll feel like a tap is being turned off if you don't. Because it'll feel like, okay, the current and the lifeblood that was running through this outlet into the world is drying up. And that doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It means that the outlets that are saying, okay, this is the most potent delivery method for this consciousness into the world right now, is shifting. And that's just because we're evolving. It's because everyone else around us is evolving. And so those outlets are naturally going to shift over a lifetime. Like if I had come back to you in like 20 years and we had like a reunion call and you were still doing mind body healing with the same program, I would be shocked. I would be like, wow, okay. Because we're meant to have that evolution and that responsiveness to the ecosystem of relationships and consciousness around us, the same way that everything in nature grows and responds to its environment and to the ecosystem of all of the living beings around it. So it's very natural for those outlets to refine. But what's key is that you gave yourself that lived experience. You didn't sit on that idea for decades saying, oh, if only I could start this mind body healing program maybe one day. Right? That's that importance of going through the complete creative cycle, not to make sure that you do it right, but to make sure that you do it so that you can have the lived experience, so that your like intuition can have something to hold on to guide you and say, great, we've absorbed that. This will feel even better. Here's where you want to go next.
Yeah, because in essence, it's like we naturally, as humans, we think we follow the outcome, but what we follow the feeling that the outcome is supposed to give us. So we can just as well be conscious about following the feeling. If you make that shift, if anyone makes that shift, it becomes easier and we can be more detached from the actual goals and allow ourselves to redirect, because all we're doing, we're following the desire, the fire that you were talking about. So the metaphor I give to my clients when I talk about this kind of life flow as well is, and I loved living in Portugal because living by the ocean, it gave me so many analogies related to water. And I would sit on the shore, and this one thing that was coming to me is like, it's like, you start with a general direction that you want to follow. Kind of, there is an urge in you, this kind of fire that you mentioned, that this is what you want to follow. But what people naturally do with that, that stubborn, heady kind of approach that we were talking about, is they're trying to swim against the wave in like a straight line, But if you kind of flow with the currents and with the waves, kind of surf, they will take you here and there, and maybe you will get to that shore or meet these people or kind of hit different points on that journey, which will enrich you all the way, but you're all the time still following that feeling. And you are actually, I love how you were saying that the work that you do is saving so much energy and and time. And I love this,
not fighting the currents.
It's exactly that. You actually get so much more energy by living and working this way, because you're not constantly battling against yourself and against life. You're not just clinging, like grasping. Again, everything kind of ties in this conclusion, where you just flow around and you're just following yourself, and it's the most effortless thing to do. I'm not saying it's super easy, because
you are still swimming. You're still swimming. You're still active. Like, you're not just like floating and being taken wherever. You are working with the current. You are a co-creator that needs to engage with it, but you're not waiting and you're not forcing. You're not fighting the current, and you're also not letting yourself be completely swept underneath the water. You are engaging with life. Like, you are saying, like, okay, you and me, spirit, like, where are we going? Show me where to swim.
I love this.
I
love this co-creation idea. I think this is the essence of this entire work. And I'm just gonna let this kind of sink in a moment. I wanted to ask you, because we were talking about how everything has changed in the last year since we met first, and we were in touch over the time, but I wanted you to kind of ask you here, what is exciting for you? What you're reflecting on now, when you're crossing this threshold and seeing how everything is changed, and what just reveal some more about what you're observing, what it means for you and your business. And
yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing I'm observing is that people have gone through a maturation process of what it means to be engaged with personal development, of what it means to be engaged with business and the creative process, and also what it means to be engaged with coaching and mentorship and having community along the way. It means we use social media very differently or less or in different ways. It means that we are more discerning of some things we talked about earlier in this call, of when people are saying that they have the answer, of like, this format is the way to grow a business, and the only way to get clients and things.
This is the thing to beware.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
this is what yes, this is what people are maturing out of, the hypnotic kind of sense of thinking there's one way to do things, thinking that they have to use social media in a certain way or at all to advance their creative process or grow their business. And what I've seen a lot in myself and in my community is reclaiming the sense of social media or all of these things as a tool rather than as the source of your art or the source of your business. And what's been so interesting is that as many of us, myself included, have taken a step back from using social media and using the familiar strategies that I was used to run my business this past year, especially. I originally did that thinking, okay, I'm leaving social media behind forever. I'm only going to do local work and local mentorship now. And I'm only doing in-person events. And I am like not using any of these strategies anymore. And what I've returned to through that process, which was very necessary, is being able to reclaim how I use any platform at all, whether it's in person, online, Instagram, YouTube, social media, email, like text, like walking into a physical store on my street, like any of it, as a way to know that like my vocation is always going to feel bigger than the platforms I express it through.
Oh, this is amazing.
And that's a good thing. And that means that I get to choose what platforms I use, but I also get to choose how I use them. And for me, another big thing this year has been that knowing that social media does not grow your business, relationships grow your business. And so relationships can be created on any platform depending on how you use it. And there will be times that some platforms are just a no to you for relationship building, and that's okay. But it also means that any platform is possible to use when you look at it from that lens. And I think that's what a lot of people have gotten really tired of, is the idea of like, I'm supposed to churn out content to be engaged creatively or to grow my business or share my art. I have to be on like Instagram and like using these strategies, or I have to be online at all. And then realizing it's actually not essential to be on any platform specifically. It's just, where are you right now able to create the most present and deep relationships? Maybe that's walking. Like a few months ago, I walked down my street and walked into a store and started talking about my work. And now I'm in a partnership with that store. They're like an interior design company that's women led. And we're in a partnership right now where I'm bringing a mentorship event to their community at their physical store. That's relationships, right?
Love
and
it.
at the same time, I've been having these like conversations on Instagram DMs. Something that I left behind for a long time because I was like, this space is not, cannot be where I create relationships. And yet the way that I use it and interface with it now is so different that I've been having the most potent conversations through my Instagram inbox simply because of how we both, me and the person on the receiving end, is using that platform. And been receiving clients and been creating collaborations, and like there's so many opportunities that have come out of that. But it's knowing moving forward, like I'm not attached to any platform at all.
Yeah.
Like my business doesn't live on Instagram, my business doesn't live on YouTube, or live even like at the limits of the people that are around me in person. Like it has the ability to go into any platform at all, as long as my focus is that relationships and where I thrive in that are what create my business and what grow my business. And alongside of that, of course, is in the relationships, what are your like beacon activities where you know that if you show up in that space and talk about your gifts and like give your offerings, that it basically sells itself because there's that recognition of, oh my God, like that's what we're talking about. That's what we're getting into. Like so engaged, so present with the person you're sharing that experience with, that you don't even need to try to over explain yourself or package it perfectly. It feels like it sells itself because you're engaged with the person that you're wanting to have that offering with. And so those are my biggest learnings from this year, after getting off of social media and doing only like in-person retreats and local events. And that was so refreshing and so needed because it brought me back to the deepest sense of relationship.
That is so cool. I love this.
Yeah. And being able to then reintegrate myself back into like, I can use any platform. And ultimately right now, we talked about like what outlets have creative lifeblood in it, right? Like knowing that the path will shift, but you're following that inner fire, that's your guiding point. And right now, continuing to do in-person partnerships and like client sessions. I have a one-on-one client right now that we go for walks in the park and the forest. And those are where we have our one-on-one sessions, is by like walking in the forest trails.
Amazing.
And like, that's incredible. And then I also have some international clients that we have Zoom calls and we dance and we breathe and we lie on the floor and we get out our pen and paper and like physically workshop stuff on the call. And like, that's a deep relationship. And so for me, that's my guiding light right now, is like there's creative lifeblood in both online and in-person mediums. But I've come back to this sense of not being attached to any platform whatsoever, because I know that I'm just following where my deepest relationships currently are infused and can come from.
Yeah, it felt so real. Like, I don't know, we were talking about everything that is real, but I felt your energy when that realization and all these reflections. It must have been very meaningful because I can feel it from you that it's just something that it pulled me in. There was no screen, nothing. I'm just like, I feel it so much. It's so real, and I think many people will realize this. I know that you are a kind of pioneer of ideas and things that will need a time for most people to give themselves permission to follow, which I can recognize as well. And I've been in so like the same space as you. I've stopped doing social media a while ago, and you just use it for connections as well now and again. But basically there is this kind of let's say a pattern of changes, how sometimes we go from this busy saturated, stimulated environment and all that we need to go to that almost hermit mode or just pendulate all the way across to some extreme, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
kind of what you described, just
Yeah.
going like, no, I'm done with social media and just going to do live events. And then kind of the pendulum swings in the middle after a while of just going back and forth. Well, you didn't explain the back and forth, it's just my adding to
Mm-hmm.
to the story. But just to illustrate, it just kind of lands in the middle where the realization is kind of going beyond and transcending. It's not this or that.
Mm-hmm.
It's neither of this. There is a deeper truth
Yeah.
in the work
Yeah.
that and I think this is so precious to land on. Yay, I'm so happy to hear that.
Thank
So
you.
um if you were to share to the listeners, whoever is tuning in, what would be the best way to find you if they wanted to work with you or follow your ideas and the advice that you give?
Yeah. So right now for the international community, Instagram is still one of my favorite versatile platforms for visuals and speaking and writing and all of those things. So I'm at Sarah Rose Frank with a C. I'm sure
I
Gosia will be
will
able to
put
put it in the
it,
show
yeah,
notes for spelling. There's
of
no
course.
H on my name, which confuses people sometimes. Just Sara. I also use YouTube now mostly for short films that is less populated, but when they do come out, they're very close to my heart and they're more immersive, long form kind of
Mm,
creations. So
yeah,
those are my favorite right now is
I will
Instagram and YouTube for
put the
the
contact.
online space.
Yay. Of course, I will put the contact details for you. And I love Sarah's work. So whoever wants to get in a flow with their work and whatever actions they're using, I will definitely encourage to connect with Sarah. And I love your YouTube channel because it's
Oh,
so
thank you.
magical. I
YouTube
love.
buddies.
Yes, we are both YouTube and podcast buddies at this point officially. They're magical, and yeah, there is, I think, in all of your art, which is the posts and videos that I've seen, there is that sense of, I want to say, magic and wonder of life and kind of that sense of discovery and exploration that I really love. And
Mm.
it's something that is heartwarming and inviting. So I just love seeing them pop up when they
Oh, I'm
do
so
on my.
glad. That's how I feel when I'm making them. So it's glad to hear that that transmits. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that's one of my key values in life generally. So that will infuse into all of my art. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Sarah, for sharing all your thoughts. It was amazing. I'm so grateful
Thank
you came
you.
to
This was so
join
fun.
me. I know. Yeah, I will put all the details for Sarah in the show notes. And yeah, that's it for today. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did. And I will post all the details on how to follow and how you can work with Sarah in the show notes. And I can really recommend getting in touch with her if you want to work in the flow, which means more efficiently and in touch with your intuition and your deep values. So, this is it for today. Thank you for joining me today in Cosmic Tickle, and we'll catch up in the next episode.